Hey gang, Jeff from War for the Tower wants you to know that one of his other shows, Shattered Worlds RPG, is fully caught up so you can totally chat with them as they make it. It's actual play, it's got robots and wizards. It's great. Come on down, look up Shattered Worlds RPG on your podcatcher of choice. This is an Unspoiled Network podcast. This is Unspoiled, covering Doctor Who, Season 7, Episode 5, The Angels Take Manhattan. In this episode, I believe we are actually saying goodbye to Amy and Rory at this point, and I thought this was a very affecting and very satisfying final episode for the two of them. We'll see. Welcome to Unspoiled. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha.
I'm Jamie.
So yeah, I really liked this episode a lot. I thought it had a nice, precise, simple story. And it was all about what you would do for the person that you love. And I don't know about y'all, but no question, I would do exactly what the fuck Amy did too. Not even a moment's hesitation. There's just no other option at all. So I was into this. I liked it. And also Jamie sent me a couple of shorts that y'all had asked for me to see before we recorded. And for those who haven't seen them, I'm going to spoil them. But one of them involved Rory writing to his father to let him know what happened to them. And that was a really nice bit of closure there. Because I didn't really think about how recently they had said goodbye to their dad. Because it's hard to place things in time in this show. That's part of the deal. But him being there, just never seeing them again and not knowing what happened would have been pretty fucking brutal.
And because I had not seen that myself until yesterday, I didn't know that. So when we watched last week's episode, I was like, well, this is a fucking bummer.
Right.
Because poor Brian is going to be there watering the plants and never knowing what happened to his son. Mm-hmm. Yep. So I appreciated that Chris Chibnall actually made that short using the storyboard so that that question could be answered for us and for Brian.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I knew that eventually we'd have to say goodbye to these two. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm not positive that this is really goodbye, but it feels like it. It feels like it much more than the other time where you asked me, I think I'm going to see them again? And I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure we will. That just didn't feel like enough of a big deal.
Well, this isn't a spoiler because this was all over the press and everything. This is it.
Okay.
Karen Gillan, when she negotiated with Stephen Moffat that she, to leave and how to leave, she said, I want to make sure that there's no question. This is that Amy and Rory are gone.
Okay.
She felt like it just lessened the impact if there was that question out there.
I 100% agree. And even though for me watching, there was still a minor question, it didn't feel that way to me. It felt like this is it. Mm-hmm. And I think I like two things about it. One, I just love the two of them just going to bat for each other in the way they do and how clearly this is all happening because they can't be apart. Mm-hmm. And secondly, I like that this is a consequence of the Doctor having them as companions. Because I just like the Doctor needing to face consequences.
Yeah.
And this wouldn't have happened to them if they weren't with him. And he had, he tried to quit him, and he couldn't do it.
He just didn't know how to quit them.
It's true. And you know, there has to be a price for that.
Yeah.
You know, there has to be some, and it's unfair that they're the ones that have to pay it, but it also takes its toll on him, I'm sure. And I thought that his acting when Amy vanishes was really great. Because that is a moment of just sort of despair and just such deep frustration and anger at the fact that he can't do anything at this point.
Yeah.
And I feel like without somebody literally dying in front of us, that's the closest we're going to get to seeing that from him. And, you know, for all I know, there will be a death of a companion eventually. But we haven't seen that. We've seen just like separations.
Yeah.
But this is as close as it can happen. And I needed something like this. I needed there to be a real price. And I'm satisfied with this. I like it. I thought it was well done.
When I originally watched it, I won't say I was unsatisfied, but I think I wanted more of a fireworks kind of ending for them. Because I knew they were leaving. I didn't know what episode it was happening in, but I knew that they were leaving in this season.
Right.
And when it happened, I was like, that feels like a fizzle. But I think part of the problem with that was me and where I was at, how I felt about Doctor Who at the time. I was I was just not as into it. I wasn't as emotionally invested.
Right.
And at this point, I was emotionally invested in Rory, but only Rory.
Yeah.
And this time, rewatching it now, with a whole different outlook on these episodes, on Stephen Moffat's run as the showrunner, and how I've really changed how I felt about Amy as well. It was way more affecting to me. I cried, and I also would not have wanted any other kind of end for them, because if they didn't end up together, I would quit.
Agreed.
I would quit. There's no reason for these two to not be together forever.
Yeah, after everything that they have been through and everything that Rory specifically has sacrificed, because it does feel like it's always been him.
He's the man who dies.
Right. We needed Amy to be the one to step up at the end and be willing to risk it for him.
I thought about that. Like, what if it were the opposite? If it was, for whatever reason, the angels were targeting her throughout the episode instead of him. And how that would feel like, once again, Amy was damseled. And of course, Rory is going to move time and space.
Right.
To be with her, to find her again. For her to be like, it's him. It's Rory. And I can't live without him. And this is it. This is the choice. There is no other choice. I'm going. It had to be that way.
We haven't seen Amy have to make some of these choices yet.
Yeah.
It's really revealing that she hasn't, you know?
The last time that Rory was really taken from her, she immediately forgot it. Because of that crack in space and time. She forgot him. She forgot all of it. So she didn't grieve it. She didn't feel it. It was gone. So, like, she would have jumped into that crack. Sorry.
Nah.
If the doctor had let her, she would have. But she forgot him so fast. And I think she loves him more at this point than she did at that point. She was still kind of into the doctor, not really understanding what she was feeling, didn't understand how important Rory actually was. Until he waited for 2,000 years.
I really appreciate this. It almost feels like the writers realize, like, oh, we've never really had Amy be the one. We're going to have to do that, you know?
Yeah.
And again, I don't know, but I liked seeing, I just liked it, guys. I just did. This was just a really, like, again, there's something to the fact that this show has, what's the word I want? They tend to overcomplicate things with the story
Yes.
because they're trying to do something with, sci-fi. And this one, it just felt like they didn't do that. They just kept it very economized. Feels like a weird word to use, but honestly, that's the best I can think of in this case. It just felt like they really tried to make it as uncomplicated as possible and have the character stuff be what drove the story. And that's always just going to be more effective. Mm-hmm. It's always going to be the thing that I find riveting is character stuff. And I think that the show is always at its best when they let a character that we know and love be like the focus rather than some weird gizmo, rather than some like, kind of plot device or bizarre consequence. Let the thing be resting on the people. I want to care about them. Let me care about them, I
read something that originally, like when Stephen Moffat was starting to write what was going to be their final episode, he was conceptualizing obviously a completely different story, but it was going to be Daleks. And he quickly decided that that's not right and changed it to the Angels. And I feel like this is the Angels used as effectively as they were used in Blink.
Yeah, agreed.
And any other time that we've seen them, it hasn't felt like this. With this, there was so much menace. Plus, the fucking baby giggle. Get the fuck out of here with that. It was just much creepier than when, the one where they were on that weird planet.
Those of you who have not listened to, who are not patrons, you are missing out on a seasonal show that I do called Unspoogled, in which I liberally use child giggles as a sound effect.
Hate you.
Because they are excellent mood setters, let me tell you.
When they're deployed in a certain way, it is creepy.
Mm-hmm. Yup.
Because it's not like if I hear a child giggle, normally if I'm around a child that's laughing, it's not like I'm like, oh my god, shut up, demon. It's
Liar.
in stuff like this where they use creepy children and creepy children's noises that normally wouldn't be creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Like the baby statue and the giggle. None of the other angels make a noise, but the baby statues have the giggle. Get out. Hate it. It's awful. I was very worried about Rory in that basement.
Listen, this is part of what I love about this episode as well, is that it starts off kind of feeling like it is going to be a bit of a gimmicky episode.
Yeah.
Even when I saw the gravestone that had Rory's name on it, my first reaction was not, oh no. It was, oh fuck, really? We're killing Rory again? Are we doing this? It was a reaction of frustration, Mm-hmm. And when you have it start off also with characters you've never seen before, because we've got this detective man.
It's hard-boiled.
It's great.
Noir detective.
This also
with his
contributes...
questionable New York accent.
Very questionable, you guys. It was really something. I wondered, I kept, when I would, when he wasn't on screen, I kept picturing him being played by the guy who plays McNulty on The Wire, who is British, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But this guy just gave
Baltimore accent in The Wire.
Yeah, it just kind of gave me McNulty vibes. But this dude is... This beginning is another way of making me think that this episode isn't really going to be a major, character affecting episode. Mm-hmm. So I like that it starts this way because it tricks me, but it's still really engaging. I gotta say, I understand why people enjoy the Blink episode, mm-hmm. but as far as Leaping Angels, to me this blows that episode completely out of the water. And I don't know if it's just that people don't talk about it as much because it's a spoiler, because of what happens. And so it's less in the conversation because Blink is sort of a standalone episode involving people that we don't really know or see ever again. So it's easy to just let people come in and watch that one. And if they're not into Doctor Who.
Part of it is it's a good entry into Doctor Who, which I think is actually not the best way to go because it's such a high bar to pass once you've watched Blink, because that episode is it's just solid from start to finish. It's a really good story. It's standalone, and it's a good one to get people to watch. But if you expect all Doctor Who episodes to be as good as Blink, you're gonna be disappointed.
Yeah, I really agree. I think it's setting people up. You don't have people start on a series with like one of the best critically received episodes. You just don't. That's not a smart way to go, everybody. Have people start with a medium episode and then warn them.
I think Stephen Moffat, because he created the Weeping Angels, which honestly I think is one of the greatest creations for science fiction. Like what an original idea that is. It's made statues creepy forever for me.
Yeah, I see that.
And then, but it's kind of like he intellectually owns that in a way. So he's the only one who ever writes Weeping Angel episodes. And then there was that one from the first season with Amy, which I can't think of. The Time of the Angels, I think is what it was called. That 2-parter where it really lessened what was so creepy about them. And he really course corrected with this, where they're used exactly the way they are in Blink in such a creepy way. It's a little hokey when it's the Statue of Liberty.
Listen, it's super hokey, but the episode doesn't rely on it.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with it. That's the main thing. Don't let everything hinge on the stupidest part. Have the stupidest part just be a bit of a like, we're going to do this. You know?
Statue of Liberty is a weeping angel. It's in the background, even though it's right up against the building.
Yep.
It's still like, that's not the angel that gets them. And I don't know. I just feel like every single version of angels in this episode are so well deployed. And it's just so creepy. And also, it really nails how sad it is what the angels do, which Blink did as well. But those weren't characters we cared about. So here we're like, Rory just got sucked back in time. We don't know where. And we don't know if Amy does this, that she's going to end up in the same place that he is. That's fucking tragic.
Yep. And I wanted to ask you about this because I'm not positive if I'm remembering this correctly. What it said that the angels feed on, I thought had been the time of the people who are being moved.
It's basically, it causes this sort of energy that they then feed on the life they would have lived.
Okay.
Kind of?
Because I felt like this episode, the doctor says, moving people creates energy, like a displacement energy, and they feed on that.
Yeah.
And to me, that was different than what we were originally told, which is like they feed on the time that somebody would have lived.
That's what I feel like how it was explained in Blink.
Was the time they would have lived, right?
Yeah.
Which I, at the time, was like, that doesn't really work because they're still living out their time. It's just in a different time. But that's they're still living until a ripe old age. It doesn't make any sense. So this episode talking about they feed on the displacement energy from moving them, that, to me, makes a much more compelling case. I think that's really interesting.
Because Stephen Moffat wrote this too. I think he probably found a way to improve on what he was making that be in Blink. Speaking of getting all of these fucking spam calls, I'm getting one right now.
No! People listening, when she says speaking of, that's her and me before, not to you.
We had a whole conversation about it right before we started recording. So yeah, I think that Moffat actually had some time to really work out what that meant and explain it in a different way. It's still sort of the same theory, but just explained differently. And maybe because that was the 10th Doctor and this is the 11th Doctor, he's learned more about the angels since then.
I think it's a minor thing that maybe people wouldn't care about, but that was the main issue for me when they were introduced, was I loved the concept, but the explanation of why they did what they did didn't really work for me. And just changing that little thing, to me, first of all, it makes them make sense to me personally. Mm-hmm. And it also gives this like place, as the doctor calls it, like a power center or a battery, whatever it is, that makes a ton of sense too, because this is where it's happening. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't, like, it just, all of the way that the angels work to me makes more sense this episode. And so in all, I think that this is probably, out of all of the episodes that we've covered, in my top 5. Like, just, it corrects some things. It's just a tight story. It has people that I care about that are really, like, permanently affected. There's no takebacks on this. Mm-hmm. And I need stakes. I don't get invested when I know we can just undo all this, which is what almost always happens.
That, honestly, like, I love Rose Tyler. I always have. When she got stuck in that other universe, I found that to be so incredibly heartbreaking. And when she came back in season 4, while I was happy to see her, always happy to see her, I was like, well, this just makes that heartbreak that I felt mean nothing. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Because you brought her back and she's not supposed to be able to come back. That was the whole point of that.
Right. Yeah, I heartily agree. I don't want the worst for my people, but, you know, I also want to feel like whatever's happening to them means something.
Would I like a spinoff where we see Amy and Rory living from the 1930s through World War II and knowing everything that's going to happen in the world because they came from the future and, like, being some kind of psychics and making a bunch of money off of their, like, prognostications? Sure. How fun would that be?
That would be amazing, honestly. Why did you have to even put that in my head?
Or just a series of these two living their lives without the technology they're used to.
That's the thing that I find the most personally frightening. Is if I were put in this situation, I would not cope well, kids.
Right.
This would not be good. It would. I just can't imagine.
You think about, like, Outlander. That's kind of the point. In Outlander, she gets sucked back into, 200 years earlier. Mm-hmm. But she was from the 1940s.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a big adjustment going back to the 1700s, absolutely. But she adjusts pretty well.
Right.
Being somebody from the 2000s who is used to having an iPhone in their pocket, who is used to internet.
Yep.
Not even the space and time travel. Just your regular Earth conveniences. And then going back to the 1930s, where there's not even television.
Yep.
I wouldn't know what to do with myself. I guess I would read a lot.
This is like, guys, I don't know how often y'all think about those dark days in, like, 1995, but I think about them a lot. When I would get lost. And that was it, kids. Once you're lost, you're lost. That's just find somebody to help you and hope that you can remember what they tell you. Or that they have a pen and paper on them.
I have a really funny story. I think it was 1995. Maybe 96. I don't think I was even yet 20. My friend had an extra ticket to see The Cure because she couldn't go or something. And my other friends were at the show and I was like, I'll go and I'll just meet up with them at the show. I like The Cure fine, but I wasn't going to pay money, but it was free. I lived in Tempe and in Arizona, everything is a grid. It's really, really easy to learn where you are because everything's a grid. It's just simple. You just memorize the order of the streets. But Phoenix was not a place I'd ever really driven to. And it's still a grid. I got lost in downtown Phoenix trying to find the arena because I'd never been there and I was using written directions from my friend. And I drove around for an hour and a half. I was like, I can't find it. I have to go home, and I don't know how to get home. And I spent the rest of the evening trying to figure out just how many turns did I make from the highway? Where is the highway? How do I get back to Tempe? And so then I get back to my apartment, and my friend was like, "You're home already?" And I was like, "Oh, I didn't go to the show. I got lost." And that's the only time in my life I ever got that lost, but it has stuck with me because I was 15 minutes from home, and I did not know where I was.
Look, there's getting lost in general. I have been lost in London before having a cell phone. And, I mean, at least everything was in English. That's the one advantage. But it was just terrifying. And I didn't have a home phone when I was living in London either. I didn't have like a landline, and I didn't have a cell phone. I used payphones. And just things like that, or there's just, the basics of like, there's just so much about technology that I find deeply comforting. And I know that people who, make the point of just like, but it's tracking you and it's yeah, good. Good. Thank you for tracking me.
Lost. Someone will find my phone. My boyfriend will ping my phone.
It's just, I don't mind is where I'm at with that. Good.
When I moved to LA, I bought a Thomas Guide. Do you know about Thomas Guides?
No.
Kids, Thomas Guide was a big, fat, spiral-bound map that went sort of grid by grid. And I bought a Los Angeles one when I moved there because I didn't know my way around at all. And you had to turn pages and find the area you were going to, and also often flip back to other pages to find where you are and figure out how to get from there to this part of the map, and then how does that work on the streets. Luckily, I'm really good with directions, so I only had to use it for a short amount of time. That thing cost $45.
Yikes.
It was all of Los Angeles, and it was the only way I was able to learn my way around until I got my bearings and understood the layout of the city.
So, in short, I agree, Jamie. I would love to see an episode of them just coping with how things work now. And figuring out how to, like, I've been watching with Owen Pawn Stars a lot lately. And people bring in all these things that are from, like, the 30s because they're collectibles now. And they found these ingenious ways to do stuff that we now have just so automated that you don't even think about it. And I would love to see the two of them trying to use some of this equipment that it's just like, well, I guess this works. It takes a lot more energy. I have to actively spin these whisks on my little mixer myself.
I know what you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about.
The little handle.
Mm-hmm. And like it still works, but it's just it's not the same. It won't be the same. It doesn't have silicone blades to scoop out of the edges of the bowl. So now I have to stop and do that with a wooden spoon. But it'll do. Just things like that.
Why didn't this series get made?
Probably because it's just boring. Really. It sounds fun to watch, but I bet it might be kind of boring. I don't know.
I don't think it would be at all. You make it like kind of a comedy and it'll be great.
I would love to see her like dealing with the clothing. And just, and the makeup, we're used to having this array of foundation colors and lipsticks and all this really great stuff for everything. And that, and in that era you had one kind of foundation and hoped it worked, or you didn't use it. And red lipstick.
Did they even have liquid foundation, or was it all powder?
I don't know. I really don't. I know about the makeup that was used for the stage, and that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. Well, that's cake makeup.
Yeah. And yeah, it wasn't like you had mascara the same way. It wasn't like you had the choices of liquid or pencil eyeliner and whatnot. Mm-hmm. Like, just things like that we just don't really think about. And
Amy's not going to find all those fun colors for her nails.
She won't be, like, think about how she was used to dressing.
Yeah.
That's never going to fly. She can't do that.
Those short skirts are not going to work.
No.
She's a scandal.
So, yeah, just things like that. And Anyway, so we're way off topic here. Let's start with Mr. Sam Garner, who is being asked to investigate these statues by some rich guy.
He's a crime boss.
This dude sucks.
He's like, what was his name from Kingpin? He's like Kingpin, but not nearly as cool.
Yeah. He's got a much less threatening vibe. He feels much more pathetic to me than scary. Mm-hmm. And there's something about the way his suit fits. And I can't tell if it's just this guy has a weird shape, if the suit doesn't fit right, or if there's like something inside his suit, like padding or what.
I think that might actually just be period accurate suit cut.
I'm going to send you a screenshot of...
Because the suits were like really boxy back then.
It's just
really
like...
wide leg pants.
It's tight. It's like gives him an hourglass shape. It's real weird. I don't like it. And it made me go, what is this dude? Because I think I'm supposed to think he's rich, but he needs a tailor. I can't buy that he's rich if his suit don't fit.
Well, maybe he's Donald Trump rich. Where you can't seem to get a suit that fits.
I just sent you the screenshot. It should come through in a moment.
It just came through. Let me take a look.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, it's like tight around it's tighter around the middle than maybe they did put some padding to make him look a bit bigger. It looks like right there in the middle there's something. There's like a ridge at his chest line.
I think you're right. I think they padded him out because it just doesn't... Something's weird there.
Because his shoulders aren't nearly broad enough for how big they are trying to make him look to be.
Yeah.
Also, his arm is not in his other sleeve here.
Is that supposed to be because he has his hand on his holster under his jacket?
Maybe.
But look at his
left arm. That's a flat sleeve.
That does look like a flat sleeve. But he moves. Maybe that's supposed to be what it is? Is that, like, it fits weird because his arm isn't in the sleeve?
Maybe.
I don't understand. This is not explained. So I'm sorry to focus on this because people who can't see what we're talking about are going to be like, what? Who cares? But yeah, it is a weird, like, it was a distracting thing. And I was really, really relieved when it turned out that this dude wasn't really like the main event of the episode because when he's introduced, I just didn't get anything off him in terms of feeling threatened by him. The most that he threatened was when he sets up River. And it wasn't him. It was the angel, you know? Yeah. So we have Sam going and investigating at this like weird apartment complex or hotel. Is it an apartment complex?
It's supposed to be an apartment building.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now, I'm glad that they said the name of it out loud because when I read it...
Winter Key, right?
Yeah, but I read that as Quay.
This is something that I finally learned only like 5 years ago. I think covering Song of Ice and Fire. Because he uses the word key a lot in that because there's a ton of ship shit in those books. Right. And I kept on trying to say it and getting it wrong. And I think Brendan made fun of me a few times. And so I finally looked it up, and that was the only reason that I knew.
What is a key?
It's supposed to be like a jutting out where you bring up a ship.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to look it up and make sure that I have this.
I think
because my jutting out is not a good definition.
I think I'd never heard it said out loud and known the spelling.
I've heard it said out loud on audiobooks as Quay, and they have not been corrected. So
well,
we aren't alone.
Sometimes people do audiobooks and there's nobody there to correct them for the pronunciations of anything.
It's so true, guys. Once again, talking about Song of Ice and Fire. A concrete, stone, or metal platform lying alongside or projecting into water for loading and unloading ships.
Okay.
Yep. So,
well, that's a weird name for this building.
Yeah, that was part of the thing as well, is that I was looking at it thinking, when I saw the name of it, I was like, oh, okay, so this is like going to be a shipping area. And then I saw that there were people living there, and I was like, oh, okay, no, it's not what I thought.
Yeah.
But so, and he sees like a couple of elderly people in the windows, and walks up to the front doors. And honestly, this is some great use of, I don't know if this was filmed in New York or if it was filmed in England.
Most of it was filmed in Cardiff, except for the stuff in Central Park. That was actually Central Park.
Okay.
And I think there was a little bit of street stuff, but thousands of people showed up to watch them film.
Aw.
And so it was really difficult because they didn't want to spoil anything. Mm-hmm. So mostly what we see that's supposed to be New York is not, and then everything in Central Park is, which I could tell, like, that's definitely Central Park.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this first part here, going into the building, first of all, great use of architecture that feels like it's period. It certainly would have existed, but it definitely feels sinister. Mm-hmm. And then when he gets inside, the doors just open. A lift just appears.
Yeah.
And how unsettling it is, but he's still going with it. And then when he gets on and turns around, and one of the Weeping Angel statues is right there. And we know what it is. So for us, we're like, oh, fuck. But he still doesn't know. And he's still like, oh, fuck, because that's weird. And it seems to sort of settle once the lift lifts away. Because that was really weird that it's right there right now. But also, I just go to a different floor and don't have to worry about it anymore. Mm-hmm. So he thinks. So he's walking down the hall and comes across a label of his own name on one of the doors. And goes inside. And there is an elderly version of him laying on a bed. Saying, they're about to get you. They're coming. They're going to take you back. I'm you. And I love how, like, slow the lead up is. He finds his own wallet. He finds his own hat and coat, the exact ones that he's wearing. Everything about this is just, we know what's happening. But for him, it would make no sense at all. Yeah. And so, like, really, what are you going to do other than go in and figure out what the hell's happening here, you know? And his older self says they're coming to get you. He turns around to try and leave, and there's an angel right there. He tries to go the other way, and there's an angel coming up from the other side. He tries to duck out and use the stairwell, and there are two angels coming up the stairs. He turns around and goes back upstairs, and as he does that, we're cutting to the start of the chapter, the dying detective being typed out. Mm-hmm. Which is great. I love it. And he goes out onto the roof, and there's this thundering, and then we see this huge mouth behind him with the teeth, and he turns around, and it's the Statue of Liberty, and it's so stupid. But honestly, I was fine with it, because they really earned everything with the build up there.
I have to point out, because you obviously don't remember, and I can't remember what episode we were talking about. But you said something about how ridiculous would it be if the Statue of Liberty was a weeping angel.
Did I?
And there were people that messaged me and they were like, oh my God, she's going to laugh so hard when she finds out.
I can't believe that. I love it. I love when I say shit offhand that turns out to be something. That happens with Rashawn all the time too.
It does. It happens with Krista sometimes too. I think being the unspoiled person, especially if you're perceptive or you're creative in your thinking, that you'll, like, throw something out that you're like, this is absurd, but how fucking ridiculous would it be if it happened? I think maybe it was when we talked about Blink, because there's that shot at the end of all the different statues all over the place. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sure. I'm sure somebody could tell me where it was talked about. But you definitely did say something about the Statue of Liberty being a weeping angel, and everybody was like lost their minds.
I am so delighted, you guys. It always just makes me really happy when I'm able to increase everybody else's enjoyment by doing something like that. Oh, yeah. Yay. That makes me happy.
I remembered the Statue of Liberty in this episode as being way worse than it actually was used. And I think because of my frame of mind when I originally watched this, I was just like, ugh. Okay, Moffat.
I get it.
In my head, I remembered it like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Oh my God.
Which it's not. It's not like that at all.
I wouldn't, like... Look, I don't really want that. But if they did that, I wouldn't be that mad about it either, because that would also be really funny.
I just, in my head, remembered it like the Statue of Liberty stalking through New York and thinking, like, how stupid is this? Like, people wouldn't notice, which is still a question. Why aren't people noticing? But, I mean, the angel's probably just sucking them all up as she walks along, so.
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot to question about how anything works all the time, you know. That's just how part of the thing with this world.
Yeah.
But there's also, I mean, with the Weeping Angels in general, I guess I've always just sort of expected that there was like an element of like being able to make people forget. And that's not actually anything that's stated. But I could see that being really valuable if they were able to do that.
I would imagine all I can believe is that when she decides that she's going to make her way from Ellis Island over to the Winter Key, that she's just scooping up people as she goes. And that's the only way you can get away with the Statue of fucking Liberty just stepped off the pedestal and made her way across town.
God, that is so funny. You know what? I'm fine with it. Go for it, kids.
I'm fine with it.
Yep. Why
it happened,
not?
and then she's got that crazy face, and I was like, all right, cool. I like it. Why not?
Yeah, that's kind of it, right? Like, if I'm just going to go with this in general, go ahead and just do whatever. But I agree that, like, it's at least an area that feels like there wouldn't be a lot of people to see in the first place, which helps some.
But also, like, I'm okay with this. I'd rather have this than, like, a giant fucking Cyberman walking through Victorian London.
Yeah, that wasn't so great.
This giant weeping angel, fine. Fine. At least you can come up with a headcanon of why people don't talk about this. You can't when there's a giant robot stomping through Victorian London when they don't even have, like, running toilets in most houses.
Oh, God. I'm sorry, but I just love how angry you are about it, because you should be. It's fine. But it is just, you know, the fact that we are asking questions that they apparently didn't ask in the show is infuriating occasionally. So, okay. We go to the credits and then come back to Central Park. Our buddy's hanging out, and the doctor is reading some amazing book. I have to read this because, can I tell you guys? Again, I knew this was River. He's reading about her, and I'm just like, this sounds like River. Why? This sounds exactly like River as a book character. New York growls at my window, but I was ready for it. My stocking seams were straight, my lipstick was combat ready, and I was packing cleavage that could fell an ox at 20 feet. And I immediately was like, this sounds like River getting ready to go out and ruin a man's life. And then it's her, and I just was so delighted that I recognized her like that. It just made me so happy. Mm-hmm. Because just I between this and the other time, I just feel like that means you drew a character very effectively. Mm-hmm. You know, it just, that I think is a compliment.
I mean, the clue is right there. That it's Melody Malone, private detective in Old New York Town.
I didn't think about the name. But yeah. Old New York Town. God damn. That is funny.
And then you see a little flash of the cover, and it's this big curly hair and then boobs.
I didn't see the curly hair. Ooh, I missed that. But yeah, I like when cleavage that could take out an ox at 20 feet. I was like, that sounds like our river.
Yep.
I just, I don't know. And
legendary boobs.
They are. So, I just think that's so funny. Guys, I missed her.
I always miss her.
Okay, so we have that. We have the Amy is wearing glasses now to read.
There was a little bit of business in the last episode where Rory is going through their phone messages. And one of the messages is that Amy needs to come to the optometrist and pick up her reading glasses.
Oh, I like it. Well, I didn't notice that, but I like that there's this bit about them aging. I like that, you know, like, it doesn't really... It's just something that doesn't happen on this show. Is the acknowledgement of, like, just real life happening.
Yeah.
And I just like that continues with them. Because I kind of thought that last episode was the acknowledgement of it that we were going to get. And
right.
I didn't expect it to be something that came up yet again. And it just really, for me, it's important to keeping them being real people that I care about, you know? So she, and the doctor says something about how her glasses make her eyes all liney, and then he pulls them off and realizes, and Rory immediately gets up to leave because he just doesn't want to be here for this. And she stops him. But, eventually he says that he will go and get them some coffees. And the doctor is continuing to read this book out loud by request, as Rory is going to get the coffees. And it becomes clear as this progresses that what he's reading is actually happening.
Yeah.
And this is when we get the introduction to the babies.
Yeah.
And it is great. Now, this really begs the question, how do weeping angels reproduce? I would like to know. I don't know about you guys. I mean, I'm certain there are fanfics out there that are terrifying that address this.
Oh, God. There probably are really bad ones out there.
And if you guys have any, I want to know about them. Thank you. I genuinely do. I want to know how a weeping angel gets knocked up. I want to know how they give birth. I want to know if these babies age. Like, it seems like they're trying to say that they do. But do they?
Or are they trying to say that they do?
I feel like they're meant to be like the predecessor to the full-grown ones, but maybe they're not. Maybe they are. Maybe they simply exist, and they are not a result of procreation at all.
Yeah, I didn't think about it as these were created and born and are growing. I took it as like first of all, I don't know how the weeping angels exist, where they came from, but I think about as statues, because there's all kinds of statues around of babies and sometimes children and then adults. So I thought of it like that, like in order to assimilate, there's all these different versions and they sort of stay that way. And then the babies seem to have less power to displace people than the full-grown angels. So they, like what they do to Rory later, they displaced him, but they can't do it very far. So he really just ended up a few blocks away.
So you don't think they grow and turn into full-grown angels?
I didn't think about it that way. I thought about like this is the shape of the angel. Okay. You know, these angels are just little. And then there's the big angels. And then there's a really big Statue of Liberty angel. So they can come in all sizes.
Okay. Well,
That's probably because I don't want to think about angels reproducing. My brain just did not go there.
Have we heard about the origin of the angels?
No.
Okay. I'm fine with the angels not reproducing. Like, let me just say that, first of all. I'm not particularly committed to this idea. I just would like to know how it works at all. Okay. And we see later there is an adolescent one also. Mm-hmm. You know, they're not just babies or full grown. We see one that's sort of an in between. It's a tween.
You know what I'm glad that they didn't do is utilize gargoyles.
Oh yeah, gargoyles are too easy. Right?
I feel like it would just be super cheesy to do that.
Yeah, gargoyles
because they already look like literal monsters.
Yeah, exactly. That's just too easy. Making something that looks like it's supposed to be a protector, like an angel, be the baddie is much more unnerving. Yeah. That's part of why babies as a threat are so effective. It's the same as like anything with a kid, an evil child. It's a corruption of something that was meant to be good rather than something that was just bad because it's bad. And that's always going to be a little bit more unsettling, I think.
Did you ever see The Good Son?
I did not. Is that the one with Macaulay Culkin?
Macaulay Culkin and Elijah Wood.
Oh, Elijah Wood's in it? I didn't remember.
Yes.
That. Okay. No, and I haven't seen it.
Macaulay Culkin. He made that like, it was either the next movie or maybe after My Girl. It was definitely after Home Alone. So he sort of did this movie where he plays a bad kid. And it was very unsettling because you knew him as Kevin McAllister, and he's just like this delightful little kid being this like really bad kid who's just evil because he's evil. Yeah,
that's just, I mean, I do find the concept of like, is evil nature or nurture kind of thing. I do think that's a compelling question in general, but it's not something that I think if somebody is just born bad makes for a particularly compelling story. Okay. It depends. I mean, there's the idea of somebody being a monster there's a reason that true crime is so popular, and it's a lot of it is because of the fact that we're trying to make sense of things.
Yeah.
That to us just don't really like, how can a person want this kind of cruelty or enjoy or whatever. Yeah. So I understand that in its thing. And I think that's part of why we always have the origin story. After a monster story gets super popular and somebody is looking to explore more the world they created, it's almost always the origin of the monster. Let's try and explain why they are the way they are.
Didn't they do one of those for the Halloween movies, like to make people understand why Michael Myers became Michael Myers?
Probably.
Yeah, I don't know. Nobody needs to know why.
It's just, for me, it's the sort of thing that there's no knowing, and the explanation almost always involves abuse. Mm-hmm. And for me, I find that kind of offensive, where it's an implication that like people who are abused turn around and become abusers by default. And I know that's not what they're saying, but anytime that a victim is turned into a monster, I find it really questionable and really lazy also. So that's part of why I always get really irritated at that kind of thing. It's just like, hey, there's a lot of people who were victims of abuse who didn't turn around and just start murdering people. So can we just not? And therefore, origins of things like that don't interest me usually, because it's often like we're trying to explain something to ourselves that I don't think necessarily has an explanation. That's part of what's weird about psychology, is that there are things that you can link and be like, okay, this obviously stems from this, but then there are things you can't, that you're just like, something's wrong. Yeah. This person's fucked up. I don't know what else to tell you. Like, they're a mess. Yeah. They're dangerous. We got to keep them away from people. Anyway, babies are scary, though. And I mean that in every way. I don't mean just in this show. So, so Rory gets displaced abruptly, and it's nighttime when he ends up in the 30s. So that's one of the like major things, because for me, it took a second for me to understand what had even happened. Yeah. I followed the skinny guy for 2 more blocks until he turned, and I could ask exactly what he was doing here. He looked a little scared, so I gave him my best smile and my bluest eyes. And I love Amy says, beware the yowza. Beware the yowza. And the doctor suddenly looks very unnerved, and she says, Doctor, what did the skinny guy say? And he said, I just went to get coffees for the doctor and Amy. Hello, River. And she says, hello, Dad, which will never not be weird to me. Anytime that's the thing where she calls Amy Mom, it's just weird.
Yeah.
And I'm not mad about it or anything. It's just really weird. And yeah, that was when I was like, oh my God, he's in the 30s. This is no bueno. What happened to him? I hated it. Rory, why does everything have to happen to you? Why do you have to be the one? Because he volunteered to get coffee. Because he's always trying to do things for people.
Moral of the story here is don't do shit for anyone.
Agreed.
Just be selfish. Yeah.
It's a way to live, guys.
It's actually not the way to be.
And then nothing will ever happen to you if that's how you want to live. So the doctor begins to realize what the fuck is going on. That this book, and he thinks it's written by River.
Yeah.
Initially, of course. And it's understandable why you would think that. I love the fact that it turns out that it's Amy.
Yeah.
It's great. It makes me so happy because Amy, I wanted her to have something to do that was hers. And even though the circumstances are terrible and she winds up in the past and stuck there, that sucks. Getting to be the author of this like series is super fun. It's such a weird thing because she's writing knowing that at least this book the doctor's going to find.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to see this again, if he's going to find the other ones, you know, because I think there's more than one, right? The way that in the short, the way that Rory talks about it, it's a full series of books.
Seems like it, yeah. She made a little hard-boiled series.
Yeah. I just really...
Which is smart. She probably wrote it under a pseudonym because, you know, women authors couldn't get published as easily as men, which is still true. And that way it's not going to be immediately obvious to him, but she also knows, like, this is the kind of thing he likes to read.
Mm-hmm. I just really... I'm happy that she gets something other than, like, being a model. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with being a model. Don't get me wrong. But that feels so surface for her when she's been through so much and has to have learned a lot and really have some wells to draw on at this point in her life.
She also, in the last episode, we found out that she was a travel writer.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that was already a thing, like, writing was becoming a thing for her. That's cool. Right. Get it? Right. You get it.
Bad
See what I did
there?
Pun. And also, you know, with the modeling, you can only do that for so long.
Yeah.
Like, that's a very, that's a job. It's like being an athlete. There's an expiration date on it. And you make hay while the sun shines, but that sun is not going to shine forever. So I'm just happy that there was something that she could do that could withstand the test of time, as they say. So anyway, okay. The doctor is trying to figure out what the hell happened, and is back on the TARDIS. Meanwhile, River, somebody gets the drop on her. And this should have been my first clue that she hadn't, like, written the book. But they get approached by this dude. Okay, I'm going to say this. I have a problem with this. There's like one black character in this episode, and his name is Hood.
Is it?
It's Hood, and I really, I don't know what that is about, but can we not, please? It just feels like a bad idea. It doesn't look good, everybody.
I didn't know that character even had a name.
It's only Hood. There's no last name. It's in the Amazon X-ray
I
thing.
figured he was like henchman number 1.
Right. And honestly, that might have been better.
Yeah.
But what can you do? So, they collect Rory and River and bring the two of them to this dude's house. But it's clear that Rory is just the spare. Mm-hmm. And she's the one that this dude actually was interested in talking to. And so Rory gets tossed down into the basement with the babies. And the guy, Hood, gives him a box of matches. And Rory's like, why do you care? And the guy says, it's funnier. Which is probably the most cold-blooded line of this entire series. That just made me stop dead and be like, oh my God, that is heartless. That is fucked up. It's funnier. And this dude isn't even watching, I should mention. So it's not like for my entertainment. It's just the knowledge that you probably tried to save yourself that I'm going to find hilarious later.
Yep.
That's brutal. Am I wrong?
No, I didn't realize that's what he said.
Yeah. It's funnier. Guys, look. I find it really interesting how many lines there are in this show that are meant to be like the badass line that don't really hit for me. And then there's something like this that's given to a sort of nobody that to me is just really, I mean, there are so many layers to the fucked upness of that that I just can't parse them all. And it's just such a brief moment, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, that really fucked me up. Meanwhile, River is talking to this dude, and I think there's a point at which Rory is like looking at one of the vases and it says something about River. Is that correct?
It does. He says something about that he was looking at it. It was in Chinese and suddenly he could read it. Mm-hmm. And she said something about how that's because the TARDIS energy like lingers so you can translate things. I'm
trying to see the spot where this happens again because I want to see exactly what it says.
It's before he's led to the basement.
Okay.
And they realize that this guy collects these particular artifacts from China.
Rapture of Summer. I think that might be what I was thinking of. It wasn't her. Okay.
Okay. It's in the book. And that's how the Doctor knows because he tries to go to 1938 New York and they get like pushed out. There's like some sort of temporal energy that the TARDIS can't break through. Mm-hmm. So he's trying to figure out some other way to find Rory. And in the book, there's something about this guy collecting these particular artifacts from this particular time in China. So they go back to 221 BC, where these vases are being made. And he has them leave a message on one of the vases in Chinese, but translated says Yowza.
Yowza. I love the idea that there was any like ancient Chinese equivalent to Yowza.
Now there was something cut from the script where, because we see this guy, what is his name? This bad guy, Grail. We see him later pretty much being taken by the angels. Mm-hmm. And there was something written that never got filmed where he got transported back to 221 BC, China.
Oh.
And was forced into making the exact things that he collected later.
Oh, irony.
Yeah, and that got cut out, which is fine.
Yeah, that's fine. There's too clever sometimes.
Yeah. And maybe Stephen Moffat was learning by this point to, like, maybe this is one too many. I already have a Statue of Liberty in here.
Yeah, there's really what it comes down to for me is that I don't care what happens to this guy.
Right.
Like, just let him be taken and it doesn't matter to me at all. So,
right, because him being taken is justice all on its own. He tried to have River eaten by this thing.
Mm-hmm. Does he know exactly what they do even?
He knows that no, he doesn't know. He knows that they make people disappear.
Right.
But he doesn't know what happens to them.
So, yeah, as far as he knew, she could just, like, have just never, like, getting taken back in time is bad enough. But he doesn't even know it's something that they stay alive afterward, you know?
When he brings her to the angel that he has chained up, she says that she's met them before and that this angel is screaming out in pain and then realizes, like, oh, this is why you have so many locks on your doors. But it's because he's, like, tried chipping away at it. He's done all kinds of damage to this angel.
Okay, because she says it's screaming, and I thought that was a result of the chains on it. But it's because he's, like, tried to chip at it and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't even hear that part. Yeah, well, I'm not really that mad about it. Go ahead and chip it away. Fuck it. Who cares? Hate you.
So then he, like, turns off the light, and that's when it grabs her. When she can't see it, it's able to move.
Mm-hmm. Ugh. It's really freaky. The thing with the lights turning out and them suddenly having moved, you'd really think you'd get used to it, but you just don't get used to it, do you?
I know I brought this up when we talked about Blink, but my favorite videos on the internet are what I call weeping angel cats, where people videotape them when they, like, have the camera, then move the camera away, and then go back, and the cat's, like, 5 steps closer and has, like, frozen.
Yes.
Those are, to me, the funniest cat videos ever are the weeping angel cats.
Really amazing. Just, I love you cats. Y'all are good. Okay, so eventually, some shit begins to pop off and he's yelling, "What is that? What's happening? Is it an earthquake?" And it turns out that it is the TARDIS attempting to break through. And it appears in the house, in the, like, lobby, and River's saying, "Oh, you bad boy. You could break New York." And Mr. Grail just yells, "What does that mean?" And honestly, I really identified with him in that moment.
Doesn't she say something about, "Now you're in trouble, my husband's here"?
She says, "It means, Mr. Grail, just you wait till my husband gets home." And then the Doctor lands and is able to get out of the TARDIS despite this whole, you know, this bouncing
also, back. Take some time to fix his hair and make sure he looks good.
Mm-hmm. Just a moment. Final checks. Testing his breath. Can I tell you something?
Mm-hmm.
The other day, I was shopping at Sam's Club with my little mask on. And I had to, like, speed up to pass a car in the parking lot with my cart. And it was heavy. And I started to breathe a little hard and open my mouth. And I thought I had stepped in something. And it turned out it was my own breath inside my mask that was so fucking rank that I almost stopped to check my shoes. Kind of nasty. It was the most humbling moment of my entire life.
You are full of these stories today.
Guys, I was telling Jamie earlier, I had a migraine yesterday and I was vomiting all afternoon. And I vomited so hard that I peed myself a little bit. And it was truly awful. Thankfully, I wasn't wearing any pants, so it was a quick fix. But
I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
You need to tell them how you how you started this story to me, though.
How did I? Oh, by saying, Jamie, you know how I hate the wet tubes. Yeah, I forgot I said that.
Just out of nowhere, she's like, Jamie, you know how I hate wet tubes? Yes.
They betrayed me the other day. They know. And they have nothing but contempt for me in return.
Wet tubes.
But yeah, so this is my advice to all of you out there, is if you ever start feeling a little bit too high on yourself, put on a mask and exhale and see if you really deserve to feel good about yourself at all. Because it'll really set you straight.
Well, this is really comforting because I have to wear my mask all day at work. And often, if I'm in the back, I'm by myself, so I can take my mask off. But when I'm out on the floor, I have to keep it on. And so that means I am smelling my own breath quite a bit, and I haven't noticed it being bad, so that's good.
Good, yeah. Just make sure your mouth is open when you do it, and check that. Yes. But, oof, it's real bad. It's real bad.
I wonder what you ate.
I have tonsil stones.
Oh,
not everybody gets them, but it's basically like there are pockets in your tonsils that collect like food, and it can just rot and sit in there. Yeah. So I will go and like basically clean them out. You have to do it with like a Q-tip or your finger or whatever. And I do that like fairly often because I'm aware it can happen, but I hadn't done it in a minute and some shit had begun.
Do you still have your tonsils, or is it because you had your tonsils removed?
I still have my tonsils, but apparently you can still get them even if you don't have tonsils. It's just, there's,
Wow. I did not know that was a thing.
It's awful, and they smell like death. They are rank. I mean, I just hate them. I hate them. So anyway,
sounds pretty bad.
Yeah, it's bad. Like I said, I thought either I had stepped in something or somebody had changed their baby right around me. Something like that.
My God.
It was really bad.
I really appreciate how honest you are about every aspect of your life.
There's no reason to hide, like y'all know that I'm a person. And being a person, I rail against the wet tubes enough that I just really think I need to back that up with evidence that there's a reason why I think this whole body is just a bad deal. And so these sorts of stories, I think, make my case for me pretty compellingly. Is compellingly a word?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. We'll say it is.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my wet tube story for the day. Check your tubes, everybody. They might stink.
That's another postcard.
Check your tubes. Oh God, that is a postcard. That's absolutely the next postcard. Fuck. You're
Just
right.
in time for Halloween. Check your tubes. People that might stink.
God. Okay. Everybody calm down. So the doctor comes to see River. She's caught, and he realizes that he's going to have to break her wrist because earlier Amy read aloud that he broke something. And as far as he's concerned, by saying it out loud, she has virtually guaranteed that it has to happen now. Mm-hmm. And this leads to this whole thing where he's really hopeful that River was able to get away without doing it so that it can prove that things don't have to go the way that it was written. But in the end, we find out that it does indeed have to go that way.
Yeah.
I really liked that, though. Him hoping that there was another way. Mm-hmm. Because the whole reason he begins to flip out is Amy figures out that the chapter titles are hints
Well,
about...
she figures that out because she wants to read ahead and figure out where Rory is. And he's like, no, if you read ahead, then it becomes a fixed moment in time. It becomes real.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like, try to figure out how we can figure this out without reading the actual text of the book. And she's like, chapter titles. That way it'll guide us, but there's no spoilers.
I love it. It's another no spoilers bit involving River.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, chapter titles, and he opens the book and he sees the skinny guy calling the doctor. There's a bunch of chapter titles. I'm trying to see them all here. The one that gives the clue, because I don't even remember what it is. The Gargoyle, Julius Grail, the Roman in the cellar. That's the one. He's in the cellar. Of course, by the time they get there, he's not. But then he is.
But then the doctor also sees the one that is Amelia's last farewell.
Yes.
And he gets very upset.
That is when he just yells at River, get yourself out of there without breaking your wrist. Figure it out.
Yeah.
Which... I really think it's interesting that in the end, he doesn't break anything.
Yeah.
You know, like he says to her, well, now I have to break it because you read that I would break it. But then he doesn't actually he's not the one who breaks it. So it just like, it's not really what he said, but only because he misinterpreted what happens in that scene.
Yeah. Because I don't think Amy read... I think Amy was skimming, and she said, you break something. So maybe she didn't
it's just
actually...
his dialogue saying, now I have to break a thing, because Amy read that I have to break a thing.
Right.
So, yeah, long story short, River does have to break her wrist in order to get out of there, which I just really don't see why they can't just break the fucking angel's wrist.
Well, look at what this guy did to try to figure this angel out. He was only able to chip away at it. He wasn't able to break pieces off of it or break it apart.
I wasn't sure that it was because lack of trying. I thought that he just needed chips to test or something.
No, I think he probably was trying to break it.
Okay.
And all it would do is chip little pieces off. And so she knows, like, she's not going to be able to break these fingers.
Ugh. So the doctor uses some regeneration magic on her to heal her later.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a bit of a moment between the two of them where he says, you must hurt. And she says, yes, and the wrist is pretty bad too. And I'm not really sure. Like, I'm assuming that she's talking about, like, being away from him. Right?
I think it's part of that. I think it's that she also kind of maybe sees what's happening with Rory. I don't know. It might just have to do with him.
I was just like, because she was pardoned, as we find out this episode. The fact that the doctor was, like, removed from all of the databases means that she's in jail for a crime that doesn't mean anything to anybody. And so they decided to pardon her, which is actually pretty fun. So now they could just be together. And that seems like sort of where the episode leads in the end. Like, she's on the TARDIS with him and there's no reason that she can't stay now. Right?
Unless she decides she can't be confined.
But yeah, I was a little bit confused by her saying that because I didn't really understand. She's free by the time she says this. She's been pardoned. So why is she so sad?
I took it that she sees what's happening currently with the angels and Rory. And that's making her sad.
How do you mean?
Because they're looking for Rory. There's weeping angels everywhere, and he's gone. And the reality of it is that they might not be able to find him or get him back.
I thought that they had him back by now.
Well, they go down to the basement and he's not there.
Right.
And so Amy's trying to figure out where he was taken. I don't know. I didn't really put a lot of thought into what she meant when she said that it hurts. And
she says,
also hurts.
When one's in love with an ageless god who wears the face of a 12-year-old, you do your best to hide the damage. I don't really understand that.
Maybe there's a reason, like, even though they got married, although that getting married was really for a purpose different than we love each other.
Right.
But maybe there's a reason other than her. Now she's pardoned, but she's been pardoned for a while. She could have found him.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a reason, and part of it being that she knows that they keep meeting up out of order. So it's hard to be in a relationship with a time traveler when you're also a time traveler.
Yeah. I just, hiding the damage. Like, she says this later to Amy, too. Don't let him see the damage. And I don't really get why not. Like, why are we coddling him and keeping things hidden from him? Why shouldn't he see the damage?
Well, that's true. Why shouldn't he? He causes a lot of it.
Yeah. It's just a weird position that she takes. And even if it was just for her, I could see it being like, well, spoilers, kind of. But she says it to Amy as well. And
he doesn't like endings.
And just like, yeah, so? No, nobody does. It's not a fucking thing that's unusual to him. He's not a fucking outlier in that. Like, so what? There's just like this treatment of him like he's a toddler who will have a tantrum. You know, like he's a
or
Dudley
that he's
Dursley.
So fragile that he can't handle things. And in a way, he is, because whenever anything happens that is upsetting to him, he lashes out by like,
sure.
I lost a companion, I'm not going to have another companion, and instead I'm going to decide that I have the power to make all the decisions. Blah, blah, blah.
But like, you know, shielding him from the consequences of things does not improve his coping mechanisms.
No, it doesn't.
Making it so that he constantly doesn't see damage or doesn't feel the loss of somebody, that's not a way to grow as a person. That's just sheltering in a way that's not only ultimately not like that does not serve him or her. It's not sustainable. You just can't shield somebody like that forever. You can do your best, but it's never going to be foolproof. So you're just setting yourself up to fail there. Mm-hmm. I don't really, I don't understand what they're trying to do there.
I think it's another instance of this show placing the Doctor on a pedestal that's a bit higher than he necessarily needs to be on.
Yeah. It just feels weird, like we're supposed to see him as this force and somebody to be reckoned with, but then like basic human experiences he can't handle. You know, losing people, saying goodbye, things not going his way. And it's like, I can't simultaneously see him as a force and hear that you have to shield him like he's a child. Like, those don't go together. You can't talk about him that way and expect me to continue to have respect for him. And it makes me lose respect for River a little too, which I hate. Because the idea that she's like even attempting this when it's just such a foregone conclusion that she can't sustain something like that makes me feel like you should know better than anybody that you can't sustain something like that. Come on, girl. You're smarter than that, you know? Mm-hmm. So I just found it weird, and I would have let it go if it had just been the conversation between her and him. But the fact that she says this when she's alone with Amy as well just kind of made me go, okay, you keep saying this now, and I don't really know what you want me to think, but it's not hitting for me. But anyway, okay. So, and when he uses this like regeneration power on her to heal her, she gets really mad. Is this like a finite resource in this regard? Like, does healing her mean that he can't regenerate?
There is a thing about how I believe it's all Time Lords. I'm going to need clarification on it, but that they only have a finite number of regenerations.
Okay.
It is 12? I need clarification. He's close to the end of his regeneration cycle.
Okay.
Is part of the problem.
Gotcha.
So if he uses that little bit to heal her, he's using up some of his potential regeneration energy.
Okay.
Now remember, she used all of hers to save his life.
Right.
Because she was conceived in the time vortex, so she's not a Time Lord, but she had that Time Lord regeneration energy as part of her, like, DNA. Mm-hmm. Which is why she was able to, like, change her face and all that stuff. Her entire everything, because she was a little girl, and then she was a black girl, and then she was River.
Right.
She used all of her available regeneration energy to save his life.
Yeah, I think I thought that hers was finite because she wasn't a Time Lord. And so she got like some from being in that vortex, but it wasn't really the same as it is with him.
For Time Lords, I do believe there's a certain number of cycles that they can use.
Has that ever been mentioned? I don't remember that information.
I do not think it has been mentioned up to this point on this show. It's something that I learned just through like discussing Doctor Who. I think it is something that was talked about in earlier, like, original Who.
Okay.
So I don't want to speak entirely to the exact number, but I do believe it's 12. And he's 11, remember? Mm-hmm. And I would have to really look up the explanation because I don't have it completely straight in my head enough to explain why, because it's all old lore. But we've never discussed it, so I know it's not something that has been mentioned up to this point.
Okay.
But it's something that most Doctor Who people understood. I think it wasn't something that I understood, and I looked it up back in, at the time when I was watching these shows live. Like, I think I had the same kind of question as, like, why is this an issue?
Right.
Because I didn't know.
Yeah, I wish that they had talked about that a little bit before having her have this strong reaction, because it just doesn't really hit the same if you don't understand that.
Sometimes this show operates on the assumption that everybody was already a Doctor Who fan before they came to watching the rebooted Doctor Who. But they also behave as if because so many people came to Doctor Who because it got very popular all of a sudden, especially around the time of Matt Smith taking over. They know there's a lot of new fans. They should have explained it a little bit better. Mm-hmm. But it's written by people who had grown up with this information. Yeah,
it's like they had an intro all last season that was seemingly explaining everything about the Doctor.
For new watchers.
But then something like this, they don't explain at all.
Yeah. I'm sure there are listeners right now that are very mad, but this has always been, I don't want to say a blind spot for me, but it's just been a thing where I'm like, okay, I read it once and I understand there's a certain number of regenerations, and I never really dug any deeper. Mm-hmm.
Well, if anybody has like non-spoilery information they want to share on that, feel free. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I maintain that is a weird thing to do here if you're not going to explain anything else within the actual episode.
Yeah, and like, I guess we're supposed to get it to a certain extent because she gets really mad at him and like smacks him in the face.
Right.
For wasting this energy. But then they don't explain further.
Yeah. Yeah, just odd. Okay. So, boop. I'm trying to see where's the next necessary issue. We have Grail getting got, which we don't really need to talk about any further. Uh-huh. We have our friends all getting to Winter Key and finding Rory, and Amy holding his hand as he dies in satisfaction that he's finally gotten to see her one last time.
Yeah.
Which is brutal. And Rory the First asking what's going on, and the doctor saying, "I'm sorry, Rory, but you just died."
Rory has never met the Weeping Angels.
Hasn't he? Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. So he doesn't know what's going on. And they are not explaining it to him.
No, they are not. Poor Rory. So this is the doctor telling this place is policed by angels. Every time you try to escape, you get zapped back in time. This place belongs to them. Displacing someone back in time creates time energy, and that is what the angels feed on. Normally, it's a one-off, a hit and run. If they could keep hold of their victims, feed off their time energy over and over again, then this place is a farm, a battery farm. And he asks River how many angels are there in New York City, and she says it's like they've taken over every statue in the city. And he says, yeah, they can't, because they can. They've never had a food source like this one. The city that never sleeps. And this is when we hear the crashing sound, which I think is, again, the Statue of Liberty.
It is, I'm pretty sure.
And Rory says, what's that? And the doctor just says, I don't know. I'm like, oh my God, that's right. He doesn't know. That's so hilarious. So the doctor says, what's going to happen, Rory, is that they'll come for you. They'll zap you back in time to this very spot 30 or 40 years ago. And you will live out the rest of your life in that room until you die in that bed. And Rory says, with Amy? Will Amy be there? And the doctor says, no, that's why you were so pleased to see her again. And Rory nods and says, okay, well, they haven't taken me yet. What if I just get the hell out of here? And the doctor's like, dude, that doesn't happen. This has already happened. You've just witnessed your own future. And this is when River is like, but if he creates a paradox, that will just poison everything. And that means that this place will disappear. It would literally unhappen. And this is where Rory gets the idea to kill himself because he can't die here twice.
Okay, so here's my question, and this is really my only, but why, though, question. Other than the one you brought up with her question, or her sadness. Why do the angels continue to chase Rory once he develops this paradox?
Maybe they aren't trying to chase him specifically. Maybe they just happen to be there.
Okay. Because I understand, they zapped him to this place. It causes just like with the detective, whatever, this place seems to, if your name is on that little door, then they've got you. Mm-hmm. But he undoes everything. They end up back in 2012. They're in a cemetery, which Amy says, why do we keep showing up at the cemetery? But then an angel immediately pops up and gets Rory. Mm-hmm. So we haven't seen angels do that, where they are following him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it necessarily has to be that they're following him. A cemetery is full of angel statues.
It's true.
It's just right after we recorded the first episode, I went and took my usual walk to the cemetery near me and found an angel statue there that I had never even noticed.
It probably wasn't there before.
It might not be. It's following me. But yeah, it might just have been there. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
So the scene on the roof with Amy and Rory is so upsetting.
It is, right?
And the two of them, and I'm so glad that it was the two of them for the majority of the scene. It's just so beautiful. And her holding onto his shirt so he doesn't fall.
Yep.
And then her climbing up there, and you see him continuing to sway. Like, it's just everything about it and everything about these two. If that had been the end for them right there, I still would have been happy. Because they were together. Yeah. And because, like, the amount that they love each other is so clear just in that scene where she's like, I am not going to push you. And if you're going to do this, I'm doing it with you.
I love when he's like, you have to, and she says, would you?
Right.
And he says, I would do anything. And I'm like, I'm going to call your bluff there, buddy. I don't think so.
He would do exactly what she does, which is step up on the ledge with her.
Yeah, I appreciated that was her response, because I think, like, he thinks he would do it, because in his mind, that would be a guarantee of it, like, it working. Yeah. But they don't know it's going to work.
Right.
So you got to figure out what you're going to do if this isn't guaranteed. And yeah, not being around for a world without him is the only insurance that she has in case it doesn't.
Yeah. You jump, I jump.
Yep. So, yeah, she climbs up there and she's standing with him, and I believe the doctor comes through the door just as they are about to jump, right?
I think it's just as they jump, is it not?
I'm watching it now just to... I hate heights so much, and this is just really hard to watch. I really hate it. So he says, I can't take you too. And she's like, yeah, we're doing this together. I don't know what to tell you. And it's called marriage. And... yeah, they jump and the doctor yells, Amy. And it seems like they did just come through the door to the roof. And we see them fall. And it's a slow motion of them, like, holding on to each other. And it's the best. It's so beautiful, you guys. That's exactly how it would be. And River is watching with just horror. But then they begin to see flickers of light as the building begins to change. Things are just, the paradox is shifting everything. And everything goes white, and then we are back in the graveyard. And there's an angel statue right there in the graveyard. That's what the camera zooms in on. So I think that's what it's supposed to be.
It just happened to be there.
I think it's just, that's a warning to us that they got out of that building. That doesn't mean they got away from the angels.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're standing there in the middle of talking to the doctor, who's so excited that it seems like everything got worked. We fixed it. We solved the problem. And he goes over to the TARDIS, and it looks like a mess, actually. He says, it's been a while. Does the bulb on top need changing? And Amy and Rory are in the middle of walking back. We see the angel again in the background. It's like somewhat focused on again. I think that's it. And I think this is the show warning us. And they're in the middle of talking him and Amy look at each other. He turns around and heads back to check his gravestone. And is just like, isn't it weird that there's still a gravestone here that has my name on it?
Well, I don't think it's like, isn't it weird there's still a gravestone? It's that there is a gravestone.
Right.
With his whole name.
He says, somebody who has the same name as me. I'm like, no, sweetie.
Yeah.
And just as he says that, we see the angel over his shoulder and he vanishes. Mm-hmm. And it's like a bad dream. Mm-hmm. It really is. It's like a nightmare. And Amy calls for the doctor, and the doctor comes out and is like, where the hell did that come from? It's a survivor. Very weak, but keep your eyes on it. And she says, where's Rory? And he says, they got him, basically. And she's like, so if it gets me, am I going to go back to the same time? And he says, there's no guarantee of that. It's, potentially, but certainly don't know.
He says it cannot, it's just not certain. Mm-hmm. There's no way of knowing that River's like, makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And this is when the doctor realizes what it is that she's going to do. It's my best shot. And River says, doctor, yes, it is. I just have to blink, right? No, it will be fine. I know it will. I'll be with him like I should be. Me and Rory together. And
she calls River Melody.
Yep. She calls her over and holds her hand and tells her, you be a good girl. You look after him and you be a good girl. And the doctor says, you are creating a fixed time. I will never be able to see you again. And she says, I'll be fine. I'll be with him. And he's still trying to tell her to come back into the TARDIS. And she is crying, but she closes her eyes. She says, Raggedy Man, goodbye. And turns around. And then, boop, she gone. And then her name appears on the gravestone. And his loving wife, Amelia Williams. And the doctor kind of crumples. Mm-hmm. River, for her part, is very composed because she seems to really believe that this is for the best. I think she knows how much it means for the two of them to be together.
Yep.
There's this, immediate confirmation with the gravestone that they did indeed wind up in the same place. So I don't know if they saw that or not, but at least for us, the viewer, we know that this worked out and they wound up together again. But the doctor is just really caught up in the fact that that was his goodbye to them. And he doesn't, he really thought that he had managed to, wind up in a version of the story that escaped the ending he saw at the end of the book. Mm-hmm. And was very happy about that. And then to find out that, no, indeed, it doesn't, you didn't get away. It's a real moment. And we go back inside the TARDIS. River is piloting the thing. And he says to her, River, they were your parents. Sorry, I didn't even think. I'm like, of course you fucking didn't, dude. And she says, it doesn't matter. What matters is this. Don't travel alone. And he says, travel with me then. And she says, whenever and wherever you want.
But not all the time.
But not all the time. One psychopath per TARDIS, don't you think? Mm-hmm. I feel that River is much less a psychopath than she believes that she is. Mm-hmm. But, also, she's wearing this amazing outfit here, this dress. I don't remember if this is what she was wearing when they got caught up in the 30s. But it's this, sequin number and a corset and whatnot. It's a good look. I'm just saying. Everything she wears is a good look, though.
Yeah.
So. And she says something about the book that I write, Melody Malone. I presume I sent it to Amy to get it published. And the doctor just says yes without really thinking. And she says, I'll tell Amy to write an afterword for you. And he rushes to find the book and finds the last page. And what does it say? I'm trying to find the spot.
He originally, way back at the beginning, he tears out the last page of a book because he tells Amy that way it never has to end. I don't like endings.
Right.
So that page is still in the picnic basket that they left in Central Park.
Unlikely. Somebody has used that for toilet paper by now, but that's okay.
This is also a New York 2012 where the Detroit Lions have won the Super Bowl, which will never happen. So, if you know anything about football and the Detroit Lions, it's unlikely.
Ouch, guys. You heard it here first.
I mean, they're...
Well, the Super Bowl for 2020 happened already, right? Isn't it in, like, February?
Yes, but the Lions are really bad. They've been bad forever. It's very sad. I root for them because they're such underdogs.
I don't know anything about this. I'm sorry. I have nothing to contribute.
Our listeners who pay attention to football know. They know. Everyone knows. The poor Lions. So yeah, that was a nice little joke. Like, this is some other... In fact, some people thought it was an alternate universe.
Oh my God.
Because it said that on the front of the newspaper that Amy was reading.
Okay, so I found the spot. By the time you read these words, Rory and I will be long gone. So know that we lived well and were very happy. And above all else, know that we will love you always. And as he's reading this, he puts her reading glasses on. Mm-hmm. Little Harry Potter round reading glasses. Sometimes I do worry about you, though. I think... Once we're gone, you won't be coming back here for a while, and you might be alone, which you should never be. Don't be alone, Doctor. And do one more thing for me. There's a little girl waiting in a garden. She's going to wait a long while, so she's going to need a lot of hope. Go to her, tell her a story. Tell her that if she's patient, the days are coming that she'll never forget. Tell her she'll go to sea and fight pirates. She'll fall in love with a man who'll wait 2,000 years to keep her safe. Tell her she'll give hope to the greatest painter who ever lived and save a whale in outer space. Tell her this is the story of Amelia Pond. And this is how it ends. And then we see... the little girl and the whooshing TARDIS sound. Mm-hmm. And that is the fade out of the episode.
So when they were filming this, Amy or Karen sat off camera and said that out loud while Matt was pretending to read it so that it would help his performance, right? Mm-hmm. As soon as they said cut, he broke down in tears.
Aww.
Which just... I just love them. I love the relationship that they had as people, as co-workers, and how much they really seem to care about each other, and how sad it would be to have worked with somebody for this many years and be so close and know they're leaving. Mm-hmm. I remember reading about the scene where the Doctor and Rose say goodbye. They shot that out of order, and it was shot like a week before their actual last scenes together, mm-hmm. which they then said that probably was better because we had to get all of that emotion out. And for that to have maybe been the last thing we shot together would have been really hard for both of us. Mm-hmm. And instead, in this, it's kind of exactly what these two had to do. And Matt Smith just broke down in tears.
I wish that they had let the Doctor cry.
Yeah.
But he doesn't cry often, I suppose. We saw him cry the once at Christmas time.
I think David Tennant cried a little bit more.
Did he?
I mean, he let his eyes well up more than Matt Smith does. But he was also very much more outwardly emotional as a doctor than 11 is.
So I think that's a very satisfying ending.
I do too. If these two had not ended up together, I would have rioted. And especially now, I would have been like, fuck this show, I'm done. Like, I don't know if I can go on. Because that's ridiculous. These two end up together or nothing. There is a book, a tie-in book. It's an ebook called The Angel's Kiss, A Melody Malone Mystery. That segues into the events of Rivers' book. And then there's another... Oh, Rivers' book and The Angels Take Manhattan. So I'm curious. I'm going to look for that.
I really do love the vampy style. It's one of those things that I'm like, would that get really old really fast? Or would I just be like super into it? I can't decide. Also the idea of Amelia writing books in the 30s where she says cleavage that would stop an ox at 20 feet. I feel like that would have been scandalizing in that era, but maybe not. I haven't read a lot of, genuine of the period literature. I read a lot set in the 20s and 30s.
Right.
So I don't have a great idea of what was like permissible and what wasn't. I am surprised sometimes. I was like listening to somebody who was talking about like the women's rights movement and how in the 20s and 30s women started to make a lot of headway, and it was really the Second World War that sort of set things back a lot in terms of the like gender role expectations because of women being like left to manage the homes, and just the way that shit went down just sort of like turned time back a little bit. So there are in some ways I've found they were farther ahead than I would have expected in terms of accepting certain behaviors. But
how did it set it back when while the men were fighting war and the women actually had to go out and get jobs, which before that a lot of them didn't. Suddenly they had to go and like, that's why we have Rosie the Riveter.
That's part of the
But then afterwards, didn't they kind of fight for like, hey, I just worked the entire time you were gone. I don't want to go back to being a housewife.
I believe that was the issue, was that the expectation when they came back was that things are going to go back the way they were. And they did, like for a while. And so they had to fight to make the same headway that they had thought they had made already.
Right. Okay. So it wasn't the women's choice. Or,
no.
The majority of the women's choice. It was the patriarchy.
Correct.
Okay. That makes more sense to me based on everything else I knew.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I would like to read it. So, also, that's all I'm saying.
Well, if I find it, I'll let you know where.
I'm going to try and include, I always forget this sort of thing. I'm going to try and include the links to the shorts that we watched in the show notes for this episode. And guys, if I forget, like, let me know and I'll try and go and edit it. But I would like for people to see them because I thought that they were well done.
Yes, and it fills in some blanks. Like I said, I didn't even know that PS1 existed. So I spent a long time being like, well, this is horrible for poor Brian. I can't believe he didn't know he was saying goodbye to his son forever. But also the one that Arthur Darvill did during lockdown is really fun. And it's not just him. Karen Gillan did it as well, but she just, yells something from off camera.
Right.
He's got some epic lockdown hair going on.
Oh my God, it's really
not period hair at all, but obviously in need of a haircut.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks greasy too. I was just like, buddy, come on. You're going to be on camera. Take a shower. Fuck. But yeah, I really enjoyed them. And they There's a nice bit of closure. So,
yes.
All right. Is there anything else you want to mention before we wrap up?
Nope. We just the Vampire Diaries, which Krista and I are doing. It is, it goes up every week. We're starting season 4.
Cool. Season 4. Mm-hmm. Remind me again, how many seasons?
There are 8.
8. Okay, cool. I don't remember. I feel like I watched up till season 6 or something before I fell off. I might have to pick that back up.
What I think is funny is that Rashawn listens to it. She's never seen the show.
Aw, that's adorable.
Yeah.
I've, there's been some things that I have listened to in general that I don't like, I'll listen to overdue episodes for books that I didn't read. Mm-hmm. Flophouse episodes for movies that I haven't watched. So I understand that, though. And everybody, if you are interested in supporting the show by becoming a patron, you can go to patreon.com/unspoiled. Like I said, there are unspooled episodes, which are seasonal, like spooky story ones that I do. And I think they're really fun. They are very creepy. And I just really enjoy doing them. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do as many this year as I normally do because, with Spoil Me and everything, my schedule has changed from other years that I've done it. I think I had Spoil Me last year, but I wasn't really busy yet. So this will be the first year that I'm really packed, and we'll just have to see how many I'm able to fit in. But there is a backlog of a fair number of them, and I'm planning to try and release one for everyone to listen to, and I would like to put it up on the website. I just have to kind of update my site so that people can find it and get an idea of what Unspooled is. And also I'm covering Mistborn with Miles. We are going to be finishing that up in a couple weeks, and then we're going to jump into Midnight Sun, and then jump back into Mistborn after Midnight Sun is over. So that's an idea of what the patrons-only stuff is coming up. And of course, Rashawn and I recently restarted Song of Ice and Fire. So if you are interested in that, that is open to everybody. That is not a patrons-only show. And you can find that on by searching Song of Ice and Fire Unspoiled on your podcatcher. I think that's everything. All right. Mm-hmm. Well, thanks everyone so much for listening. We love you. And we will see you next week with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.